I never thought my neighbor would turn into a thief right under my nose. But when I watched the surveillance footage showing Linda Jenkins cutting the lock on my tool trailer at 3 in the morning, everything suddenly made sense. My name is Trevor Bridges, and I run a small landscaping business here in Gilbert, Arizona. Nothing fancy, just me and 2 employees taking care of residential properties around the Phoenix metropolitan area. The work is honest, pays the bills, and keeps me outdoors where I like to be. I bought my house in the Saguaro Vista community about 4 years ago, thinking it would be the perfect spot to settle down. The neighborhood was clean, the houses well maintained, and the HOA seemed reasonable enough when I first moved in. That lasted about 6 months before Linda Jenkins got elected as HOA president. Linda was exactly the type of woman you picture when someone says the word Karen. Mid-40s, shoulder-length blonde hair with those chunky highlights that always looked slightly too brassy in the Arizona sun, and a perpetual expression like she had just smelled something unpleasant. She drove a white Escalade with one of those stick-figure family decals on the back window, showing her husband, and their 3 perfect children. Her husband Richard worked in pharmaceutical sales and traveled constantly, which meant Linda had way too much time on her hands and used all of it to police the neighborhood. The problem started small. She sent me a violation notice because my trash cans were visible from the street at 2 in the afternoon on a non-collection day. I had literally just gotten home from work and was about to wheel them back to the side yard. Then, there was the citation about my grass being a 1/4 inch too tall according to HOA standards. I measured it myself with a ruler, and she was right. But who the hell goes around measuring grass height with that level of precision? But I dealt with it. I paid the small fines, kept my property immaculate, and tried to stay off her radar. The tool trailer was a necessity for my business. I parked it in my driveway, a 16-foot enclosed cargo trailer painted forest green with my company name, Bridges Landscaping, printed on the side in gold letters. Inside, I kept everything I needed for jobs: commercial-grade mowers, edgers, hedge trimmers, leaf blowers, hand tools, safety equipment, and various other supplies that cost me nearly $40,000 to accumulate over the years. The first time I noticed something was wrong was in early March. I went to grab my Stihl hedge trimmer for a job, and it was not where I had left it. I keep everything organized in my trailer with specific spots for each tool. The hedge trimmer always hung on the left wall, 3rd hook from the front. It was gone. I tore apart the trailer looking for it, thinking maybe one of my employees had moved it during our last job. Called both of them, and neither had touched it. That trimmer cost me $600, and I was irritated but figured maybe I had absent-mindedly left it at a job site. It happened occasionally when we were rushed. I bought a replacement and made a mental note to be more careful. 2 weeks later, my cordless drill kit disappeared. The good one, the Milwaukee set with 4 batteries and a dozen bits, nearly $500 worth of equipment. Now I was getting suspicious. I questioned my employees more thoroughly. Both Jake and Marcus had been with me for over 2 years, and I trusted them completely. They were as baffled as I was. I started locking the trailer more carefully, double-checking the padlock every night. The lock was heavy-duty, a thick steel master lock that cost $60. Nobody was getting through that without serious effort, but things kept disappearing. A chainsaw in April. My best leaf blower in early May. A complete socket set. Small hand tools. Some items I did not notice were missing for weeks because I did not use them every day. It was driving me crazy. I filed a police report, but without any evidence of forced entry or any leads. There was not much they could do. The officer who took my report suggested I install security cameras. That should have been my first move, but honestly, I never imagined I needed surveillance in my own driveway. This was a gated community with security patrols and HOA fees that supposedly covered keeping the neighborhood safe. Plus, I was busy with work, dealing with the headache of replacing expensive equipment and trying to keep my business running smoothly despite the losses. The final straw came in late May. I went to load up for a big job, a complete yard renovation for a client who was paying top dollar, and discovered my commercial zero-turn mower was gone. This was not some consumer-grade hardware store special. This was a $4,000 Skag professional mower that was absolutely essential to my business. The trailer door was still locked, no signs of forced entry, nothing disturbed except that this massive piece of equipment had somehow vanished into thin air. I lost it. I called the police again, and this time I demanded they take it seriously. The responding officer was more sympathetic than the first one, probably because the total value of stolen equipment was now approaching $10,000, pushing it into felony territory. He recommended security cameras again, more forcefully this time, and gave me the name of a local company that specialized in surveillance systems. I called them that same day. The owner, a guy named Pete Rodriguez, came out the next morning to assess my property. He was a short, stocky man with graying hair and 30 years of experience in security systems. He walked around my house, studied the driveway and trailer, and nodded thoughtfully. "You want to catch whoever is doing this, I can set you up right," Pete said. "4 cameras minimum. One on the front of your house pointing at the driveway, one on the side covering the trailer door, one wide angle from your garage, and one hidden inside the trailer itself pointing at the door." "Inside the trailer?" I asked. "Trust me," Pete said. "If someone is getting in without forcing the lock, you need to see how they are doing it. Could be they have a key, could be they are picking it, could be something else entirely. The internal camera will show you everything." "How much are we talking?" "Complete system, professional installation, cloud storage for the footage. I can do it for $3,500. I winced. That was a lot of money on top of everything I had already lost, but I did not have a choice. "When can you install it?" "Tomorrow." Pete's crew showed up at 8 the next morning and worked until early afternoon. They installed high-definition cameras exactly where Pete had suggested, running cables through my attic and walls to keep everything clean and professional. The camera inside the trailer was tiny, mounted in the upper corner and disguised to look like part of the trailer's interior framing. Unless you knew it was there, you would never spot it. Pete spent an hour showing me how to use the system on my phone. I could watch all 4 camera feeds in real time, review recorded footage, set up motion alerts, and access everything from anywhere with an internet connection. The cameras had night vision and captured crystal-clear video even in complete darkness. "Give it a week or 2, Pete said as he was leaving. "If whoever is stealing from you comes back, you will catch them red-handed." I felt better immediately, just knowing I had eyes on my property 24/7. I checked the camera feeds obsessively for the first few days, watching my empty driveway at random times, making sure everything was working correctly. Nothing happened for 2 weeks. I started to wonder if maybe the thief had gotten spooked, somehow sensed I had taken additional security measures and decided to move on to easier targets. That would be fine with me. I just wanted the stealing to stop. Then, on June 14th at 2:47 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the driveway camera. I was in bed, deeply asleep, and the buzzing pulled me into confused wakefulness. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen in my dark bedroom. The alert showed a figure moving near my trailer. My heart immediately started pounding. I opened the app and switched to the live feed. Even with night vision making everything grainy and green tinted, I could clearly see someone standing at the back of my trailer. They were wearing dark clothing and moved with obvious familiarity, not stumbling around like an opportunistic thief. This person knew exactly what they were doing. I watched as the figure produced something from their pocket and approached the padlock. There was a quick motion, and suddenly the lock was open. Wait, open. Not cut, not picked, just opened. The person had a key, but I only had 2 keys to that lock. One on my personal keyring that never left my possession, and one spare in my house in a kitchen drawer. How the hell did this person have a key? The figure pulled open the trailer door and climbed inside. I quickly switched to the interior camera feed. The person was moving around inside, clearly looking at my equipment. Then they pulled out a phone and used the flashlight, and in that bright white light, I saw her face clearly, Linda Jenkins. I actually said her name out loud in my empty bedroom. Linda Jenkins. I could not believe it. My HOA president, the woman who sent me violation notices for microscopic infractions, who lectured everyone about community standards and property values, was stealing from me. From me specifically, her neighbor, someone she saw regularly and smiled at during neighborhood meetings. On the screen, Linda was examining my equipment, running her hands over a commercial backpack blower. She seemed to be deciding what to take. After a minute, she grabbed a nail gun and a case of accessories, tucked them under her arm, and climbed out of the trailer. She closed the door, pulled out that key again, and locked the padlock back up. Then she walked calmly back toward her house, which was 4 doors down from mine on the same street. I sat in bed, stunned. Part of me wanted to run outside and confront her immediately, but I forced myself to stay put. I had video evidence now. This needed to be handled correctly, not emotionally. I watched her disappear from the camera frame, then switched to recorded footage and saved the clip to my phone. Sleep was impossible after that. I spent the rest of the night stewing in anger and disbelief, watching the footage over and over, trying to make sense of it. Why would Linda steal from me? Her husband made good money in pharmaceutical sales. They lived in a house worth at least $400,000. They drove new cars. They went on expensive vacations. What possible reason would she have to steal my work equipment? When the sun finally came up, I called Pete Rodriguez. Pete, I caught her last night. I have her on video. That's great, Pete said, sounding genuinely pleased. Who was it? My HOA president. She has a key to my lock somehow. She just opened it, took what she wanted, locked it back up. Pete was quiet for a moment. Your HOA president, that's a new one. You need to call the police immediately and show them the footage. I will. But Pete, how did she get a key? I only have 2 keys to that lock. Could she have stolen one and made a copy? Or maybe she had access to your keys at some point, I thought back. There had been an HOA meeting at my house about 8 months ago. Linda had been inside my home. Had I left my keys lying around? Possibly. I often tossed them on the kitchen counter when I got home. She could have grabbed my key, stepped outside to make a quick impression in clay or wax or whatever locksmiths use, and returned it before I noticed. That was the only explanation that made sense. I called the Gilbert Police Department and explained the situation. The dispatcher told me an officer would be out within 2 hours to take my statement and view the evidence. Officer Danny Chen arrived at 9:30. He was young, probably late 20s, with a serious demeanor and careful attention to detail. I showed him into my living room and pulled up the footage on my laptop for a bigger screen. We watched Linda Jenkins break into my trailer, and Officer Chen took careful notes. When the clip finished, he asked me to play it again. We watched it 3 more times. "That's definitely clear enough for charges," Officer Chen said. "You said equipment has been disappearing for months, since March. I made a report back then, but I did not have any evidence until now. Do you still have that report number?" I found the documentation and gave him the case number. He wrote it down, then asked, "You said she's your HOA president?" "Yeah, Linda Jenkins. Lives 4 houses down at 4587 Sagaro Vista Drive." Officer Chen looked up from his notepad. "And you're certain she's the person in this video?" "Absolutely certain. You can see her face clearly when she uses her phone flashlight inside the trailer. That's Linda." "Okay, here's what happens next. I'm going to take this evidence and file charges. Based on what you've told me about the value of stolen property, we're looking at felony theft. The detective assigned to the case will likely want to view the footage from previous nights as well, see if we can document a pattern of theft. I can do that. The system stores 30 days of footage. Perfect. Start going through it and save any clips showing her accessing your trailer. The more evidence we have, the stronger the case. How far back did you say the theft started?" "March, but I only installed the cameras 2 weeks ago." "Right. Well, 2 weeks should hopefully show multiple incidents. Can you start reviewing that footage today?" "I'll start right now." Officer Chen stood. "I'll file the report immediately, and someone from investigations will contact you within 48 hours. In the meantime, don't confront her. I know you're angry, but let us handle this officially." "Understood." After Officer Chen left, I made coffee and settled in at my laptop. I started reviewing footage from the night the cameras were installed, watching the driveway feed at 8 times speed to make the process faster. Most nights showed nothing but the occasional car passing on the street, a cat wandering through, shadows moving as the wind blew trees. But Linda showed up again on June 8th, 6 nights before the most recent incident. Same time, around 3 in the morning. Same routine: walk up, unlock the trailer with her key, go inside, take something, lock up, leave. The interior camera showed her taking a commercial string trimmer and several containers of oil and fuel mix. I kept searching. June 3rd, another visit. This time she took a reciprocating saw and a tool belt. May 29th, a shop vac and various hand tools. May 24th, various smaller items I could not identify clearly. By the time I finished reviewing all available footage, I had documented 7 separate thefts over the 2-week period. 7 times Linda Jenkins had crept over to my property in the middle of the night and stolen from me. I saved every clip, organized them by date, and created a folder that detailed what she had taken each time as far as I could identify. My phone rang. It was Marcus, one of my employees. "Hey boss, we're at the Chandler job, but the commercial trimmer isn't in the trailer. Did you take it home?" I sighed. "No, Marcus, it was stolen. Use the backup trimmer for now. I'll explain everything later." "Stolen again? Man, this is getting ridiculous." "I know. I have security cameras now. I caught who's been doing it." "Seriously?" "Who? I can't say yet. Police are involved. I'll fill you in when I can." We hung up and I stared at my laptop screen, looking at a frozen image of Linda Jenkins holding my trimmer. Why was she doing this? It made no sense. I needed to understand, but Officer Chen had told me not to confront her. That meant waiting, which felt impossible. I spent the rest of the day working, trying to focus on jobs and customers, but my mind kept wandering back to Linda. Every time I drove past her house on my way in or out of the neighborhood, I stared at it, imagining my stolen equipment inside her garage or shed or wherever she was keeping it. The next day, Detective Sarah Morrison called me. She was with the Gilbert Police Department's Property Crimes Division and had been assigned my case. We arranged to meet at my house that afternoon. Detective Morrison was in her early 40s, tall and lean with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She exuded competence and immediately put me at ease. I showed her all 7 video clips on my laptop, and she watched each one carefully, taking notes on a small tablet. "This is excellent evidence," Detective Morrison said. "Very clear, no question about identity or intent. You mentioned the theft started in March, but you only have 2 weeks of video. Do you have receipts or records of the earlier stolen items?" "I have receipts for most of it. Purchase records, insurance claims I filed, the original police report." "I'll need all of that. We want to document the full scope of the theft. Based on what you've told me, we're looking at approximately $10,000 in stolen property over 3 months. That's a Class 4 felony in Arizona. What kind of sentence does that carry?" "Depends on a lot of factors, but typically anywhere from probation to 2 years in prison for a first offense. Linda Jenkins doesn't have a criminal record. I already checked. So she would likely get probation and restitution, but that's ultimately up to the prosecutor and judge." I felt a grim satisfaction hearing that. Linda was going to face real consequences. Detective Morrison continued. "Here's what happens next. I'm going to obtain a search warrant for her residence. Based on this video evidence, a judge will absolutely grant it. We'll execute the warrant, hopefully recover your property and arrest her. The whole process should take 3 to 5 days. Will I get my equipment back? If we find it at her residence, yes. It might take some time to process everything as evidence, but eventually you'll get it back. You'll need to be able to identify it, so serial numbers, photos, receipts, anything that proves ownership. I have serial numbers for all the major equipment. Photos too. I keep detailed records for insurance purposes." "Perfect. Get me everything you have. Email is fine." She handed me her card. "In the meantime, continue monitoring your cameras. If she comes back again, call 911 immediately. We might be able to catch her in the act." Over the next 3 days, I lived in a state of anxious anticipation. I checked my camera feeds constantly, half hoping Linda would try again so the police could catch her red-handed, half dreading another confrontation. I avoided HOA activities, ignored 2 emails from Linda about neighborhood business, and did my best to act normal when I saw her in passing. On June 20th, Detective Morrison called. "We have the warrant. We're executing it tomorrow morning at 6. I wanted to give you advance notice because it's going to be obvious what's happening, and I figured you'd want to know. Can I be there?" "You can't be present during the search, but you can be at your house. You'll be able to see plenty from your driveway." I barely slept that night. I set my alarm for 5:30, made coffee in the dark, and positioned myself on my front porch with a clear view down the street toward Linda's house. Right at 6 o'clock, 3 unmarked police cars and 1 marked patrol unit pulled into the neighborhood and parked in front of 4587 Saguaro Vista Drive. I watched as Detective Morrison and 5 other officers approached the front door. Morrison knocked loudly and announced their presence. A light came on inside the house. After a minute, the door opened. I could not hear the conversation from 4 houses away, but I saw Linda standing in the doorway in a bathrobe, clearly shocked and confused. Morrison showed her the warrant, and the officers entered the house. Neighbors started emerging from their houses, drawn by the unusual police presence. I saw Gary Watson from across the street standing on his lawn in his pajamas, phone in hand, probably texting the neighborhood gossip chain. 2 houses down, elderly Mrs. Patterson watched from her window. The search took nearly 2 hours. Officers carried items out of Linda's house and loaded them into one of the unmarked cars. Even from a distance, I could identify some of my equipment. The zero-turn mower came out of her garage on a trailer. Several bins full of smaller tools followed. My chainsaw, blower, hedge trimmers, all of it being loaded as evidence. Then Linda emerged in handcuffs. She was crying, mascara running down her face, still in her bathrobe with shoes hastily pulled on. Detective Morrison guided her to one of the patrol cars and placed her in the back seat. Linda's husband Richard came out next, looking absolutely shell-shocked, talking urgently with one of the officers. I felt a complex mixture of emotions watching it all unfold. Satisfaction that Linda was finally facing consequences. Anger that she had stolen from me in the first place. Curiosity about why she had done it. And a strange sadness seeing this woman I had known for years, someone I had served on committees with and made small talk with at neighborhood barbecues, being taken away in handcuffs. Detective Morrison walked down the street toward my house after Linda had been transported away. She climbed my porch steps, and I offered her a bottle of water, which she accepted gratefully. "We recovered almost everything," Morrison said. The equipment was in her garage and storage shed, not even hidden particularly well. She's been arrested and charged with felony theft and trafficking in stolen property. She's being processed right now, will probably make bail by this afternoon. Did she say why she did it? Morrison hesitated. I can't discuss details of her statement, but between you and me, it sounds like financial problems. The family is apparently in significant debt, despite appearances. Her husband lost a major account at work last year. They've been struggling with the mortgage, credit cards maxed out. She was stealing your equipment and selling it to a pawn shop in Mesa. We're following up with the pawn shop now to recover whatever they still have. She was selling my stuff. That somehow made it worse than if she had just been using it herself. Yeah, we found receipts in her house. She's made about $7,000 over the past few months selling your property. That money went to credit card payments mostly. I shook my head in disbelief. She could have just told people she was struggling. The neighborhood would have helped. We're not monsters. Pride is a powerful thing. People do stupid things to keep up appearances. Morrison stayed for another few minutes, explaining the legal process going forward. I would need to make a formal identification of my recovered property, provide documentation proving ownership, and potentially testify if the case went to trial. She thought Linda would probably take a plea deal given the overwhelming evidence, but you never knew. After Morrison left, my phone started ringing constantly. Neighbors wanted details. What happened? Why was Linda arrested? Was it serious? I gave vague answers, saying I couldn't discuss an ongoing investigation, which was true enough. The neighborhood gossip machine went into overdrive. By that evening, the HOA email chain was exploding with speculation. Someone claimed Linda had been embezzling HOA funds. Someone else said it was drug-related. Another person insisted it was a big misunderstanding, and we should all support Linda through this difficult time. That last one irritated me enough that I almost broke my silence, but I held back. The truth would come out soon enough. 3 days later, I received a call from the prosecutor's office. An assistant district attorney named Jennifer Walsh wanted to meet with me to discuss the case. We met at the prosecutor's office in downtown Gilbert, a modern building with lots of glass and metal that always felt too cold inside. Jennifer Walsh was sharp and efficient, probably in her mid-30s, with red hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She reviewed my case file in front of me, asking clarifying questions, examining the video evidence on her computer. "This is very straightforward," Walsh said. "Linda Jenkins is clearly guilty. Her attorney knows it, she knows it. They've already approached us about a plea agreement. What kind of agreement? She pleads guilty to 1 count of felony theft. The trafficking charge gets dropped. She gets 3 years supervised probation, has to pay full restitution for all stolen property including replacement costs and any business losses you can document, 100 hours of community service, and she has to resign from the HOA board immediately. What about jail time? No jail time given this is her first offense and she's cooperating fully. Honestly, Mr. Bridges, that's pretty standard for this type of case. If we went to trial and got a conviction, she probably wouldn't do any jail time anyway. Probation is the norm for first-time property crimes when the defendant has employment and community ties. I felt disappointed, but not surprised. The criminal justice system was not really designed to punish middle-class people with clean records, even when they committed serious crimes. But at least Linda would have a felony conviction on her record, would have to pay me back, and would lose her position of power in the HOA. What about the investigation into where my property went? Detective Morrison mentioned a pawn shop. We're working with the pawn shop. They have security footage and transaction records showing Linda selling them your equipment. She used her real ID, which was incredibly stupid on her part. We'll recover what we can, but some items were already resold to third parties. That's why the restitution is so important. She'll have to reimburse you for anything that can't be recovered. How long does this process take? The plea hearing is scheduled for July 15th. Assuming she doesn't change her mind and actually pleads guilty, sentencing will happen immediately following. You can give a victim impact statement at sentencing if you want. I do. Good. I'll make sure you're on the schedule. I left the prosecutor's office feeling somewhat better. Justice was moving forward, even if it was not quite the dramatic punishment I had initially wanted. Linda would be held accountable, and that mattered. The neighborhood remained abuzz with speculation and gossip. An emergency HOA board meeting was called to discuss Linda's status. She had not officially resigned yet, probably on advice of her attorney, so technically she was still president even though she had been arrested. The meeting was held at the community center, and practically everyone in Sagaro Vista attended. I showed up and took a seat in the back. The board consisted of Linda as president, plus 4 other members. Michael Chen as vice president, Patricia Gomez as secretary, Robert Martinez as treasurer, and Susan Yates as member at large. Michael was running the meeting in Linda's absence. As you all know, there has been an incident involving Linda Jenkins, Michael began carefully. She's been arrested on criminal charges. We don't have all the details, but the board has been in contact with her attorney. Linda is taking a voluntary leave of absence from her duties effective immediately while this situation is resolved. People started shouting questions. What was she charged with? Who did she victimize? Was HOA money involved? Michael tried to maintain order, but it was chaos. Finally, Patricia Gomez stood up and raised her voice. Everyone, please. We can't discuss the specific charges because it's an ongoing legal matter. What we can tell you is that this does not involve HOA funds. Our finances have been independently audited and everything is in order. This is a personal matter between Linda and another party. That's when Gary Watson, who loved drama more than anyone I had ever met, stood up and pointed directly at me. It's Trevor Bridges. She was stealing from Trevor. That's why the police were at his house afterward. My wife saw the whole thing. Every head in the room swiveled to look at me. I felt my face getting hot. I had not wanted to become the center of attention like this, but there was no avoiding it now. Is that true? Someone asked. Linda was stealing from you. I stood up slowly. I can't discuss details of an ongoing investigation. But yes, I'm the victim in the case. That's all I can say." The room erupted again. People were shocked, angry, confused. How could Linda do such a thing? Why would she steal? What exactly did she take? I refused to elaborate, which frustrated people, but was necessary. Jennifer Walsh had made it clear I should not discuss details publicly. Michael eventually regained control of the meeting. The board voted unanimously to accept Linda's voluntary leave of absence and appointed Michael as acting president. They also voted to begin the process of permanently removing Linda from the board, depending on the outcome of her criminal case. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me privately to express support. Mrs. Patterson squeezed my hand and told me she had always thought Linda was too nosy. Gary Watson apologized for putting me on the spot. A few people seemed suspicious of me, probably thinking I had somehow provoked this situation, but most were sympathetic. Over the next few weeks, I focused on getting my business back on track. Detective Morrison coordinated the return of my recovered equipment. The pawn shop in Mesa cooperated fully with the investigation and returned several items they still had in inventory. Some equipment had been sold and was gone forever, but between what was recovered and the insurance payout I received, I was able to replace almost everything. The surveillance cameras stayed up, and I kept monitoring them religiously. No more thefts occurred. I changed the locks on my trailer and started parking it in a different position in my driveway with the door facing my house's front windows for extra visibility. Linda's husband Richard put their house on the market in early July. Apparently, the legal fees, restitution payments, and damage to their reputation made staying in Saguaro Vista untenable. I saw moving trucks at their house a few weeks later. Richard never spoke to me or acknowledged the situation. Their kids, who were teenagers, looked miserable during the move. I actually felt bad for them. They had not done anything wrong but were suffering consequences anyway. July 15th arrived, the date of Linda's plea hearing. I drove to the courthouse in downtown Gilbert, an imposing building that always made me nervous despite having done nothing wrong. Jennifer Walsh met me in the hallway outside the courtroom and explained what would happen. Linda will enter her guilty plea. The judge will ask her questions to ensure she understands what she's pleading to and that she's doing it voluntarily. Then we'll move to sentencing. I'll give a brief statement, her attorney will speak, and then you'll have an opportunity to give your victim impact statement. Keep it to about 5 minutes. Focus on how the theft affected you personally and financially. Don't attack her character or be vindictive. Just be honest about the impact. Got it. We entered the courtroom and took seats behind the prosecutor's table. The room was mostly empty except for a few other cases waiting to be heard, a clerk, a bailiff, and the court reporter. Richard Jenkins sat alone on the defense side, looking gray and exhausted. Linda arrived a few minutes later with her attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit named David Palmer. Linda looked terrible. She had lost weight, her hair was lank and unstyled, and she wore a conservative black dress that seemed to hang off her frame. She would not look in my direction. The judge entered and we all stood. Judge Catherine Walsh, no relation to the prosecutor as far as I knew, was a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She called the case. Linda stood with her attorney. Judge Walsh addressed her directly. "Miss Jenkins, you're here today to enter a plea to 1 count of felony theft. Do you understand the charge against you?" "Yes, Your Honor." Linda's voice was quiet. "Has anyone forced or coerced you to enter this plea?" "No, Your Honor." "Do you understand that by pleading guilty, You're admitting that you committed this crime and giving up your right to a trial. Yes, Your Honor. And how do you plead? Linda took a shaky breath. Guilty. The judge made notes, then reviewed the plea agreement. She asked a few more questions, verifying details, ensuring everything was in order. Then we moved to sentencing. Jennifer Walsh stood and gave a brief statement about the seriousness of the crime, the breach of trust involved, and the impact on me and my business. David Palmer, Linda's attorney, gave a longer statement about Linda's lack of criminal history, her cooperation with the investigation, her mental health struggles, and her family situation. He painted her as someone who had made terrible decisions under financial stress, but was fundamentally a good person who deserved a second chance. Then it was my turn. I approached the podium, my written statement in hand. I had spent hours working on it, trying to find the right words. Your Honor, my name is Trevor Bridges. I'm the victim in this case. Linda Jenkins stole from me over a period of several months, taking equipment essential to my business. The financial impact was significant. I had to replace thousands of dollars worth of tools. I lost income when I couldn't complete jobs properly, and I had to invest in security systems to protect my property. But beyond the money, the emotional impact was worse. Linda was my neighbor, someone I trusted, someone I served on HOA committees with. Finding out she had been systematically stealing from me while smiling to my face and sending me violation notices for minor infractions felt like a profound betrayal. I lost sleep. I became paranoid. I questioned my judgment. The sense of security I felt in my own home was destroyed. I had to install cameras to watch my own driveway because I could no longer trust my community. That violation of trust is something no restitution payment can fix. I hope Linda gets help, and I hope she understands the full impact of what she did. Thank you. I returned to my seat, hands shaking slightly. Linda was crying, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Richard had his head down, face in his hands. Judge Walsh took a moment to review her notes, then addressed Linda directly. Miss Jenkins, I've reviewed all the materials in this case, including the video evidence. What you did was calculated and ongoing. This wasn't a single impulsive mistake. You repeatedly violated your neighbor's property over months. The fact that you were in a position of authority in your HOA makes this worse, not better. You were supposed to be looking out for your community, not victimizing members of it. However, I'm going to accept the plea agreement because you have no criminal history and you've cooperated fully. You're sentenced to 3 years supervised probation. You will pay full restitution to Mr. Bridges in the amount of $11,400 to be paid in monthly installments as outlined in the agreement. You will complete 100 hours of community service. You will immediately resign from any HOA positions. And Miss Jenkins, if you violate your probation in any way, you will serve 18 months in county jail. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Linda's voice was barely audible. This court is adjourned. We all stood as the judge left. Linda and her attorney had a brief conversation, then she and Richard left through a side door, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I felt a strange emptiness. It was over. Justice had been served, at least in the formal legal sense, but I did not feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Jennifer Walsh shook my hand. Restitution payments will start next month. You'll receive checks through the court. If she misses a payment, let us know immediately and we'll file a probation violation. Thank you for everything. You made it easy with that video evidence. That surveillance system was the best investment you could have made. She was right about that. Without those cameras, I never would have caught Linda, never would have recovered my property, never would have seen justice done. I made a mental note to send Pete Rodriguez a thank you card and a positive online review. Life slowly returned to normal over the following months. The restitution checks arrived regularly, $200 per month. At that rate, it would take Linda nearly 5 years to pay me back completely, but at least the money was coming. My business recovered. I replaced the last few items of equipment that had not been recovered. My employees stopped worrying about stuff disappearing. The HOA elected a new board in September. Michael Chen became the permanent president, and he was infinitely better than Linda had ever been. The constant violation notices stopped. The atmosphere in the neighborhood became friendlier, less paranoid. People actually seemed to enjoy living in Sagaro Vista again, instead of feeling like they were under constant surveillance and judgment. Linda and Richard sold their house in August for less than it was worth, taking a loss just to get out quickly. A young family with 2 small kids moved in. I introduced myself, welcomed them to the neighborhood, and didn't mention the previous owner's situation. They would find out eventually through neighborhood gossip, but there was no reason to start them off with drama. I kept the security cameras running. Pete Rodriguez had been right that they were a good investment. Beyond catching Linda, they gave me peace of mind. I could check on my property anytime, anywhere. A few months after the trial, the cameras caught some teenagers trying to break into cars on our street. I called the police, they caught the kids, and several neighbors thanked me for helping keep the neighborhood safe. The cameras had paid for themselves several times over. One afternoon in October, I was working in my front yard, trimming bushes when a car pulled up. Linda Jenkins got out. I froze, pruning shears in hand, unsure what was happening. We had not spoken since the day of her arrest. She approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. She looked better than she had at the courthouse. Some color had returned to her face and she had put on a little weight. But she still looked diminished somehow, like a shadow of the confident woman who used to stride around the neighborhood enforcing HOA rules. "Trevor, I don't expect you to talk to me. I just wanted to say something if you'll let me." I set down the pruning shears. "Okay. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much, and I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm truly sorry for what I did to you. There's no excuse. I was in a bad place financially and mentally, and instead of asking for help or dealing with my problems like an adult, I convinced myself that stealing from you was somehow justified. It wasn't. It was wrong, it was criminal, and I hurt you and your business. I'm in therapy now trying to understand why I made those choices. I'm working 2 jobs to pay you back. I'm doing everything I can to make amends. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I acknowledge what I did and I'm sorry." I studied her face. She seemed genuine. I could see the toll this whole experience had taken on her. Part of me wanted to stay angry to tell her off, to make sure she knew exactly how much she had hurt me. But I was tired of being angry. Anger was exhausting. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "What you did was really messed up, Linda. It wasn't just about the money or the equipment. You violated my trust and made me feel unsafe in my own home. That's hard to get over." "I know. I understand if you never forgive me. I just needed to apologize face to face, not through lawyers or letters." "You deserved that much." We stood in awkward silence for a moment. "Where are you living now?" I asked. "Mesa." "We're renting a small house. Richard is rebuilding his client list. I'm working retail and doing bookkeeping on the side. Our kids are adjusting mostly. It's been hard on them, which is the worst part. They didn't deserve any of this." "No, they didn't. Anyway, I should go. I just wanted to say my piece. Thank you for listening." Linda walked back to her car and drove away. I stood in my yard for a long time after, thinking about everything that had happened. The theft, the investigation, the arrest, the trial, all of it. Such a waste. If Linda had just been honest about her financial struggles, if she had asked for help or found legal ways to deal with her debt, none of this would have happened. But people made bad choices when they were desperate. They prioritized short-term solutions over long-term consequences. They convinced themselves that the rules did not apply to them, that they were special cases deserving special exceptions. Linda had fallen into that trap, and it had cost her everything. I went back to trimming my bushes, putting the whole situation out of my mind. The restitution checks would keep coming. Linda would serve out her probation. Life would continue. The drama was over. A few days later, I received a letter from the Gilbert Police Department. It was from Detective Morrison, thanking me for my cooperation during the investigation and informing me that the case was officially closed. All criminal proceedings had concluded successfully. All recovered property had been returned, and the matter was resolved. She included her card and a note saying I should contact her if I ever needed anything in the future. I filed the letter away with all the other documentation from the case. Receipts, police reports, court documents, everything organized in a thick folder that represented months of stress and aggravation. I put the folder on a high shelf in my office and tried to forget about it. The holidays came and went. Christmas lights went up in Sagaro Vista. The new HOA board organized a neighborhood party that was actually fun instead of feeling like an obligation, and life felt normal again. I even started to trust my neighbors again, though I kept the security cameras running just in case. In January, I received a letter from Linda's probation officer. She was checking in to verify that restitution payments were being made as ordered. I confirmed that yes, checks were arriving regularly, and no, I had no complaints about Linda's compliance with the terms of her probation. The probation officer thanked me and said she would check in again in 6 months. Spring arrived, bringing the brutal Arizona heat with it. My business stayed busy with drought-resistant landscaping jobs and irrigation system installations. Jake and Marcus both got raises because we had such a successful year. We took on a third employee, a young guy named Tommy fresh out of high school who was eager to learn the trade. One afternoon while we were loading equipment into the trailer, Tommy asked, "Hey boss, why do you have all these cameras pointed at the trailer? Seems like overkill." Jake and Marcus exchanged looks. They knew the story, but Tommy did not. "Had some theft problems a while back," I said. "Better safe than sorry." "Did they catch who did it?" "Yeah, they caught her, long story. Ask Jake about it later." That evening, my phone rang. It was Jennifer Walsh, the prosecutor. "Mr. Bridges, I wanted to give you an update. Linda Jenkins requested early termination of her probation. She's completed all her community service hours. She's made 18 months of restitution payments without missing one. She's maintained steady employment, and her probation officer reports that she's been compliant with all conditions. The court is considering releasing her early from supervised probation. After only 18 months, she was supposed to have 3 years. That's how the system works. If a defendant shows genuine rehabilitation and meets all requirements ahead of schedule, they can petition for early release. It's actually fairly common. The judge will make the final decision, but I wanted to let you know it's being considered. You have the right to object if you want. I thought about it. Did I want Linda to stay on probation for the full 3 years? Would that serve any purpose? She was paying me back. She had stayed out of trouble. She had apologized. Keeping her on probation longer would not benefit me in any way. It would just be punishment for the sake of punishment. "I don't object," I said. If she's doing what she's supposed to do, then fine. Okay. I'll note that in the file. The judge will probably grant the petition then. You'll still receive the full restitution. That doesn't change. She's still obligated to pay you until the entire amount is satisfied. That's all I really care about. Understood. Thanks for your time, Mr. Bridges. Linda's probation was terminated early in March, 2 years after her arrest. I received a formal notice from the court. The restitution payments continued like clockwork, $200 every month. By my calculations, Linda would finish paying me back in another 2.5 years. Life moved on. I dated someone for a few months, a woman I met through a client referral, but it did not work out. My business continued growing. I bought a second trailer and hired a fourth employee. Sagaro Vista remained quiet and drama-free under Michael Chen's leadership of the HOA. The neighborhood felt like an actual community again, instead of a place where everyone watched everyone else waiting for violations. 3 years after Linda's arrest, I received the final restitution check. $11,400 had been paid back in full, plus interest that the court had added. I deposited the check and felt a sense of closure. The chapter was finally, truly closed. I never saw Linda Jenkins again after that day. She came to apologize. Occasionally, I heard through the neighborhood gossip network that she and Richard were doing okay, that they had bought another house, that their kids had graduated high school and gone to college. I hoped it was all true. I hoped Linda had learned from her mistakes and would never steal from anyone again. As for me, I kept those security cameras running. Every night, they watched over my property, recording everything, preserving evidence of nothing more exciting than the occasional stray cat or rambling raccoon. The trailer sat in my driveway, locked secure, equipment safely inside. My business thrived. My employees were happy. Life was good. Sometimes people asked me about what happened, new neighbors who heard the story secondhand and wanted details. I kept my answers brief. My HOA president stole from me. I caught her on camera. She went through the legal system. She paid me back. End of story. I did not dwell on it or let it define me. But I never forgot the lesson. Trust is earned, not assumed. People are capable of surprising you in terrible ways. And sometimes the person causing you problems is not some stranger or obvious criminal, but your own neighbor, someone you see every day, someone who smiles and waves and serves on committees with you, while secretly victimizing you under cover of darkness. The cameras stayed up, and I slept soundly knowing that if anyone ever tried to steal from me again, I would have the evidence I needed to bring them to justice. My tools were my livelihood, my business was my life's work, and I would protect both with every resource available. That's the story of how my HOA president Linda Jenkins cut the lock on my tool trailer and spent 6 months stealing my equipment before surveillance cameras caught her in the act. She lost everything, her position, her reputation, her home, her freedom temporarily, all because she made the choice to steal instead of asking for help. And I learned that sometimes the greatest threats come from the most unexpected places, from the people who are supposed to be looking out for the community, not preying on it. Living in Sagaro Vista now, years after the incident, I appreciate the peace that came after the storm. The new HOA board functions efficiently without the paranoid oversight Linda provided. Neighbors trust each other again. Block parties happen without tension. Kids play in the streets. It feels like a real neighborhood, not a battlefield of petty regulations and hidden resentments. My business, Bridges Landscaping, has a solid reputation throughout Gilbert and the surrounding areas. The theft incident, while devastating at the time, taught me valuable lessons about security and documentation that made me more professional in the long run. I keep better records now, I have proper insurance, and I protect my assets intelligently. The cameras remain, silent sentinels watching over my property. They have not caught another thief, but they have given me something more valuable than evidence of crimes. They have given me peace of mind, the ability to sleep soundly knowing that my livelihood is protected, that if something happens, I will know about it and have the proof I need. Linda Jenkins paid her debt, both legally and financially. Whether she truly learned from her mistakes, whether she became a better person, I cannot say. I hope she did. I hope she found honest ways to deal with her problems. I hope her family healed from the trauma of watching their mother and wife go through criminal proceedings and public shame. But that is her story to live, not mine to worry about. My story is about resilience, about fighting back against injustice with evidence and determination, about refusing to be a victim. When Linda cut that lock and stole from me, she thought she was clever, thought she would never be caught, thought she could maintain her perfect facade while secretly committing crimes. She was wrong. The surveillance cameras proved that. The legal system, for all its flaws, worked. Justice was served. And I moved forward, stronger and wiser, ready to build my future without fear of the shadows that once haunted my driveway in the middle of the night.